Hi everyone, and welcome to today's WordStream webinar. Today we're going to talk about creating a profitable PPC agency, and we'll be focusing on how to price your services. I'm Erin, I'm one of the presenters today, and just to get started, I wanted to go through a few logistics. Firstly, following our presentation, you'll get an email with today's recording and slides. Like you have to take a ton of notes. You'll get that, and you can rewatch it as many times as you'd like. And secondly, we are going to save time for Q&A following the presentation. So as we go about it, feel free to submit your questions during the webinar, and we'll get to as many as possible before our time is up today. So for those of you who aren't familiar with WordStream, we're a search marketing software provider with free and paid tools to help you easily grow both your AdWords and Bing campaigns, and we're slowly moving over to Facebook as well. So if you're looking to master paid search, you want to learn more about it, I definitely recommend checking out our PPC University, which is at www.wordstream.com/learn. We have a ton of resources available to you. And like I said, we encourage you to be social throughout the presentation, not just asking questions, but also commenting or adding questions on Twitter. So feel free to join the conversation. Both Elliot and I love getting Twitter inquiries, and our WordStream Twitter account is pretty active too. So chat with us, join this conversation, follow us, and we'd love to hear from you. And finally, before we kick off the presentation, I just wanted to do a quick poll with you guys today. So this will help us get to know you guys a little bit better, have a good sense of who you guys are. So tell us a little bit about yourselves and what brings you here today. A, you're contemplating starting a digital marketing agency and just the research and groundwork. B, you're in the process of actually starting the agency. C, you currently offer PPC services, but are considering revamping your pricing model if you want to learn more. D, you currently offer other services like SEO services or social services, and you're considering adding a paid search element. Or finally, you're content with your pricing model and you just want to see what everybody else is working on. So take some time, fill this out, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I see Elliot is telling the results. So I'll give you guys just one more second. Okay. Okay, so it looks like, oh wow, this is pretty interesting. So 9% of you guys are thinking about starting an agency. 65% are currently offering PPC but are ready to revamp pricing. That's really interesting. 9% currently offer other services and are thinking of adding PPC. And then finally, 17% of you guys are pretty happy with the status quo for your agency but want to see what others are working on. Really interesting. And as we go throughout this presentation, we'll definitely try our best to cater it now that we know a little bit more about you guys as an audience. All right, so now that we've gotten through all the red tape, I wanted to introduce you to both myself and Elliot. I asked Elliot to join me on this webinar because he is kind of our resident agency expert. He is on our agency sales team. He's been here for a little over 3 years, and he spent the last 2 years specifically coaching a team of 8 people who are dedicated to helping agencies manage their PPC accounts.
Hey gang, it's Elliot here. Super excited to join this webinar. You may have heard Erin and I talk about agency-specific topics in the past. So we love this stuff. We will continue this series. We're going to continue to talk about agency stuff going forward. Please stay tuned. But today is exciting. We have a lot of really good stuff to talk about. Pricing, helping you get the agency or the pricing model rather dialed in to what works best for you. So we're really excited. Hope you guys are too.
Yeah, and I should actually take this opportunity to mention to you guys, I mean, Elliot and I see it as a real problem that there's a shortage of agency-focused information out there on the internet. And we talk to 1,000,001 agencies every year. And so we really kind of are making it our mission in 2016 to start to create content specifically for agencies about how you can better manage accounts, how you can price your services, how you can establish your agency. So if there are topics, kind of burning questions that you have that you'd love for us to cover, don't hesitate to let us know in the questions section or via Twitter. We're really looking to you guys kind of like partners to establish this, this series moving forward. Cool?
Perfect.
All right, so let's get started. So first things first, let's talk about how you pick a pricing model. And Elliot felt really strongly about adding in this disclaimer. So Elliot, tell me why.
Right. I think we got to start with this. Picking a pricing model for your agency is a lot like managing a PPC account. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the more specific to your needs, the better. We're going to cover a few different flavors of pricing models out there. There is some information out there with different versions, and there's a lot of different options that are out there that you guys may have read about, but the key important thing to remember is it needs to work for your business. So you need to make sure that you're considering what's important for you, where your client mix, where you are targeting the market, your potential demographic, your potential opportunities you're going after. All of that stuff needs to be considered so you ensure that you have a model that will work for your business, not necessarily what Aaron and I tell you right now or what we say, is the general thoughts out there on the broad pricing model structures. We will introduce those to you. That's a foundation for you to build off of and apply what works for you. If you have questions, you're more than welcome to submit them on this webinar or give us a call after the webinar. We can talk specifics about your business, but this webinar is not to specifically tell you how to build your model. It's so you know what is out there and you can move forward from there.
Yeah, as much as I wish there was kind of a cookie-cutter answer to this, like the best pricing is this, and you guys should all just go plug and play. That's not going to happen. All we can give you is our knowledge on each of these, and then you'll have to decide what works best for you. So without further ado, we're going to walk through the top 5 pricing models. These are the most commonly used models that we see amongst PPC agencies.
Right. And before, one kind of blanket statement about pricing models and applying this to your business, you want to be clear with your customers, and this goes forward for all of your pricing models and all your endeavors with your customers, but it's really, really important to set the expectations. The expectation setting with your customer when you're bringing a customer on board is critical, that you clearly explain how the pricing works, when the pricing happens, when the billing happens, and you leave no stone unturned in that conversation. You don't want to leave any area for ambiguity. If your client might think something else and you're thinking you explained it one way, you just want to make sure that it's very clear up front. I promise you it might be a difficult conversation up front, but it will save you time, pain, and struggle later down the road. So that is the one blanket statement that applies to all these models, even though I just told you there was. All right.
All right. So model number 1, the hourly rate. So this one's pretty straightforward. We see a lot of people doing this. They'll say, almost like a lawyer doing billable hours. I am worth $100 an hour, and I will charge you $100 for every hour I work on your account. Elliot, what do you like about this, and what do you hate about it?
This is great. I do manage the agency sales team here at WordStream, and we talk with a lot of clients every day, all day long, about pricing models and whatnot. And this one tends to come up a lot. It tends to come up with people just getting out of the gates, young agencies just starting. Maybe they're transitioning from a consulting position where an hourly rate seemed to work for other models, and it seems to make sense. There's a lot of positives up front. People think, hey, this is a great model, but I got to say there's a lot of downsides to an hourly rate, and I want to throw out, caution, proceed with caution. Some things I do like about it is it's straightforward.
Oh, yeah. Everybody understands that concept. $100 an hour? Okay, I understand.
People
I may not understand PPC.
You can apply this if you worked with lawyers, like you said. Everybody gets it. There's not a lot of explaining. The seemingly, and I say seemingly for a reason, the expectation setting seems pretty easy because it's a pretty accepted way to do business across many industries. But there's a lot of downsides, one to you, your company, and unbeknownst to the client going forward. One, PPC takes a ton of work going up front, and so that it might seem like, hey, there's a ton of work to be done. Hourly rate makes a lot of sense, a lot of account structure build out, setting up the match types, the bid strategies, and all that work. There's a lot of work to be done, but once you optimize that and you pour all that effort into the account, there might not be as much work to do, and so this is going to impact your cash flow opportunities. So the downside initially up front. Another thing is as you start to scale, the beauty about managing multiple accounts is you have an unlimited opportunity. You can keep work. Your goal is to win new clients and bring on more business for yourself, but it's a catch-22 because you can only take on so much work. The goal here is to build sustainable structural accounts that will grow with you. And while you might not need to be pouring in tons of hours to keep these accounts running down the road, your work, your good upfront work will pay dividends down the road, and you want to make sure that you're capitalizing on that and generating account revenue or a steady cash flow stream from that. So if you're billing hourly, a couple months down the road when this account is humming and you're doing all the right best practices and you're generating tons of value for your customers through conversions and great click-through rate and exposure, you might not have to put in as many hours up front, and you're not earning enough money for all that great value you're delivering to the customer. And then one last thing, we can kind of move on from here because we could go down a rabbit hole. But there's a little bit of a gray area between what is work and what is not work. Do you bill the customer for reading an email? Is that fair to go back and forth? You bill them for 5 minutes to read an email? Or what if you made a mistake on an account and it takes you an hour to fix that mistake? Is that your fault or is that the client's fault? Like, how do you suck that up and take that, eat that cost, or do you bill the customer even though it was an honest mistake? I mean, we're all human, we're not perfect, but it leaves a little bit of room for ambiguity, which is the last thing you want when dealing with your clients, especially when it comes to billing.
From an agency perspective, I worked on accounts for a long time. I think the crappiest part of hourly rates is it kind of stifles your ability to be creative and develop more efficient ways of doing your work. Like, if I can do something more efficiently, I want to do it. But this prevents me from doing it efficiently. So I'm probably doing less valuable work on your account because I'm spending all my time going through every step that I don't need to do. AdWords is releasing tons of amazing tools to cut down the amount of time that you're spending. We have an incredible tool that helps you cut down the amount of time you're spending per account. Would you not use tools that make you a better worker just because you're not doing right by the client?
You're 100% spot on. I'm glad you brought this up because we do talk to people all the time that they're interested in WordStream. They reach out to us. They're like, I really like what you're doing, but Elliot, I'm billed hourly, and this would just reduce the number of hours I put on the account, and therefore I wouldn't be making as much money. And I really bang my head against the table when I hear someone say that because I'm giving you the ability to go out and win more business, take on more business through an efficiency tool. And WordStream has a great efficiency tool, but there's tons of others out there. I'm not just saying use WordStream. Try to find ways to be more efficient. Use macros in Excel if you want to. But hourly rate stifles innovation, and ultimately, when you stifle innovation, you're handcuffing your company's ability to grow. And ultimately, my job as the manager of the sales team is to help you guys grow, help agencies grow. That's really the mission of the agency team here. So with that said, an hourly rate, while it seems attractive, and yes, if that's what you got to do to win your first business and get off the ground, great, but I wouldn't stick with it, and I would get off of an hourly rate as quick as possible. But if it's what you got to do to get that first client in the door, to get some proof of concept and move forward, great, but don't make this a long-term strategy.
I couldn't agree more.
Great.
All right, number 2, fixed rate. Again, this is a pretty common one that we see with a lot of companies. They'll say, to manage your account, I want $8,000 per month. Some great things and some terrible things about that, right?
Yeah, this is another good one, and I'd say this is definitely better than the hourly rate for sure. We do see a lot of fixed rates, and I like it for a couple reasons, but I don't like it for a few reasons. So what's good about this is it's clean, it's simple, it's consistent, and that's good for both a customer perspective and for you guys. The customer knows exactly how much they're going to be billed every month. That's a very good thing. That's easy to articulate. That's almost a value add as you're talking with the customer on setting the expectations up front. Remember, we talked about at the beginning. It's good for you guys as an agency. As an agency, you guys, and what I've been told and what I strongly agree is it's very good to have a consistent revenue stream. Having reliable revenue is a fundamental component to growing and scaling a business. If you're kind of wondering, hey, how much am I going to make next month? It really limits your ability to invest in tools or invest in areas to help you grow. But if you know I got a steady stream of revenue coming in every month and you can forecast that out, now you can start to think big picture, you can start to think long term down the road, you can start to really grow, and you can see the trajectory that the agency is going to take or your company is going to take, which is a good thing. So those are some good things that we like about a fixed rate. On the downside, though, it limits your opportunity to scale and to increase the revenue from a potential client. There's a flip side to that. So let me jump into the first and I'll go into the other one. Let's say you start to generate great returns. Like, you guys are awesome. You guys know what you're doing. You're really crushing this account and doing so many good things. You've delivered more leads than the client expected, and they come back to you and say, that was fantastic. We'd like to give you twice as much money next month or next quarter or whatever your plans are, so we continue this great growth trajectory. That's fantastic. That's what you guys want to be doing, but your fixed rate is going to hold you back, and that's the problem. You're going to take on that business because you want to keep the client happy, but now you're increasing your workload. More budget leads to larger accounts, which leads to larger workloads, which leads to more optimization hours or tasks or things that you guys have to do, but you're still making the same amount of money you were making back, I don't know, a couple months ago when the spend was less. So that's a negative for you. We don't want to see that. We want to see your revenue stream grow as the client's success and the client's account grows. That's only logical, fair, and it's ultimately best interest for you guys. On the flip side of this, let's say the client's not doing well. Unfortunately, this does happen from time to time. Something might have happened in their business where they say, hey, I got to dial back my spend by half, or the leads just aren't coming in the way they thought. Whatever the case may be, now they're dialing their leads back, and you're still billing them for an account that's much larger. Well, that's great for you guys in the short term. That doesn't bode well for long-term relations with your customer. Ultimately, we want to have a good relationship with our customer, and if we're billing them a lot more than they may feel equitable, again, going back to expectation settings, it might lead to a shorter, partnership than you'd like. And ultimately, my goal and Aaron's goal and WordStream's goal is to help you have your customers for as long as you possibly can, years, and that's the goal. So those are kind of the pros and cons of flat rate.
So from an account manager side of you, I too have a bone to pick with this.
Ooh.
And I am going to throw out a very controversial statement that fixed rate billing is like promoting communism amongst your team. And here's why. I know I'm going to get paid no matter how well I do. And so there's no motivation for me to be innovative, to try new things, to be more efficient in your account. It's like, if you're going to get paid the same amount every time, who cares, right? This is the problem with communism. It's a problem with this structure. So I would say, in terms of motivating your team, this could be very problematic. And you certainly want your team to feel excited, motivated, and really push to get your clients to the next level.
You guys heard it here from our capitalism champion, Aaron Tatum. It's a great analogy. I completely agree with you.
All right, so number 3, this is a really interesting one. Percentage of spend. When you think, kind of like Elliot was talking earlier, clients are constantly changing the amount that they're putting into their budgets. And oftentimes, the amount of money that they are advertising with is kind of similar to the amount of work you're putting into it. So this percent of spend model is becoming more and more popular. Thoughts?
Absolutely. There's a little bit of a theme here. We're getting to the more popular models as we go, but this is definitely one that I would support, and it's one that we encourage our agencies or our customers to. Anybody that really comes this is a component. It's not the only available option, but this is a big component of a strong pricing plan. And a little secret, it's a component to our own internal agency. It's not the end-all say-all, but it's a piece of the puzzle. Percent of spend really is capitalism at its finest, sticking with the theme that Aaron's brought up.
It's very controversial.
Oh dear. But it rewards good behavior, it rewards good performance, and that's something that we want to strive for. The reason we like it is if you guys do perform well for your clients, they do see the value that you bring to the table in the form of conversions, leads, form fill-outs, calls, all those things you guys know what you're doing and how to do. If you don't, give us a call. They will be more willing to invest more with you to get more. Any smart business owner would give more money. I hear it every day. I'll pay you more if you can double my leads. And you will reap the benefit of that, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you continue to grow. That's kind of the sweet spot you want to strive for. Now, there's a couple different flavors of percent spend, and again, this comes down to what's right for you. This is what the PPC, like the pricing models are like PPC. What flavor is specific for you and your customers? There's the simple flat rate percent of spend, and what I mean by flat rate or constant percentages, we will just bill you 12% of spend, and as the spend grows, the 12% grows. It stays the same, but of course that results in a higher fee per month. That's a very clean. I like that because it's simple. Everybody understands it. It is very easy to communicate and set expectations. The downside, though, is some of your larger clients might say, "Well, wait a minute, that might get a little too rich for our liking, and you might lose some of the bigger opportunities on a simple flat percent of spend." The other model is a variable percent spend, and there's really two different flavors here. There's one that's kind of confusing. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Essentially, it's for every, let's say, for example, $50,000 you manage a month. For the first $50,000, you charge 10%. For the next $50,000, they bump up and say spend $100,000. That second group of $50,000, so to speak, would be 9%, and you keep decreasing in that model. It's kind of like a stepped approach. That's a little confusing. Not sure if I recommend that fully. What I recommend is a simple sliding scale. And it's basically the percent of spend decreases as the total monthly spend increases. This seems more equitable for your clients as they grow and their spend increases. You're giving them a little bit of a discount, rewarding them for that higher spend, and it's a win-win for both parties. Now, what's important is you might want to take some time and do the math and make sure that you are still growing your revenue or your fee paid each month. If your client increases from a $10K to a $20K a month, you want to make sure that the drop in percent of spend is still an overall increase in the fee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want my 2 cents?
Yeah, I love it.
So I think Elliot touched on something really important, and that you can't overcomplicate this to the point that the people you're selling it to don't understand it or feel like you're pulling one over on them. So regardless of how you play it, you need to find a really simple, palatable way to demonstrate your model to people. Mm-hmm. But I think that's critical. The one thing to think about from an account manager's point of view is scope. Now, let's say that a client is spending a ton of money, $100,000 a month. Well, you're probably working your tail off on that account. And if their spend decreases, let's say they pull that spend back to $50K due to seasonality or changes internally, they're probably going to still expect the same work that you were doing before because they got used to you doing that. And so you really need to be careful that the scope of your project and the amount of time and energy you're spending on these projects are in line with the amount that someone is paying. And that can be a little bit tricky, and lines can get crossed there. So really, really think hard about how to manage that internally from an account manager point of view.
Right.
I'm a big fan of this model. but that's kind of my one small bone to pick with it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think the simple sliding scale, the last model I talked about, addresses your concern probably as any model could, because as they decrease their spend per month, the percentage goes up to kind of compensate that lost revenue. And then vice versa, if they grow it, you're giving them a nice discount. So you just got to work the numbers. I can't calculate all of that for everybody online right now, but this definitely gets a big star from Erin and I.
Yeah. Okay, number 4, I have a feeling we're not going to agree on this one. Number 4 is performance-based spend or performance-based payment. And this one is hinged on you achieving your client's goals. I'll leave it to you to start with this one, and then I'll throw in my 2 cents.
Sure. I think we're breaking our trend here because this is another common one we do talk about. This is also a great option for small agencies just getting started looking for some big wins. I don't believe this is scalable, and I wouldn't recommend this for the long term. But if this is something that you are doing, and I think we do talk about, commitment links and all that stuff. But if you're looking to prove to your client, I can do certain things, this might get your foot in the door, but this is not a plan I would recommend to create lasting, long-term partnerships. The expectations kind of get out of control with these plans, and ultimately, both sides of the partnership, we kind of start to I don't want to say regret, but start to get angry with the other side. So with that said, the pros here is if there's some big wins in the account, which typically PPC you can see some big wins up front. Kind of since why I said it might be good to show proof of concept early on. This might work well if you can get some big wins up front with delivering some phone calls, some leads up front. That's fantastic, but it's not in line with the amount of effort or work that is required to build out these accounts. I think you might be able to get a couple wins in the door, but it's not sustainable. On the negative side is there's a lot of things out of your control from an agency point of view. There could be seasonality issues that you just, no matter what you do, you can't get the phone to ring, and that's not your fault per se. But yet you're still pouring in hours and hours and hours and leveraging all the best practices there are into this account, and it's doing well against all of its industry average on this, so to speak, but it's not meeting these ridiculously high performance-based expectations. Or we had a couple examples of, I think 2 years ago, when the government shutdown hit and state parks were closed up for a few months. A lot of travel agencies took a hit because the state parks were closed and no one was traveling. That's something that you can't control, and it's not fair for you guys to be responsible for the phone not ringing if tourists are not calling because they know that they can't go to the state park they want to go to. So I don't like this plan because there's too many variables that you can't control.
Elliot, that was a very diplomatic way of sharing it. I'm significantly less diplomatic. I absolutely abhor this model. I think it is a terrible direction to go, and I have a million reasons why, which I'll run through quickly. It feels good to sell it. You may have the cojones to sell it, but I bet you can't keep up with it. This isn't scalable. There is no way you can continuously see amazing increases in performance in an account.
Right.
Eventually, especially if they're not plugging more money into it, eventually this account is going to plateau. There's only so much out there that you can get. So you're setting yourself up for a really challenging situation. You also, the goals that your clients have may not be achievable, or they may not understand the goals that they're setting for you. I think, PPC, our KPIs are pretty straightforward. Sometimes clients don't understand those KPIs and they start to blur with the goals that they have set for themselves. And so there starts to be this misalignment in terms of what you're working towards, especially if you're using last touch attribution. You might be the reason that somebody picked up the phone and called, But if they don't call just from seeing a PPC ad, maybe they saw 16 PPC ads, you won them over, then they pick up the phone later and they call, well, it might look like the phone book is the reason that person converted. In reality, it's you, right? So you run into all of this gray area where you can't prove that you are the reason that this conversion happened, and you're putting the person who is managing your account in a terrible position. So long story short, I hate this model. Don't do it.
Thumbs down on this model. However, if you're forced to use it, and Aaron and I don't recommend you use it, be clear with your expectation settings. Again, coming back to what I said earlier, this is something that is the most important component of this model. Set expectations and set a timeline and say, hey, I'll do it for you for a month, and then pull the plug and switch model.
Also, important caveat here, if your clients have access to the account, which they probably do, you need to be very clear with them that they cannot be getting in and changing things, changing your work, because that could significantly influence the performance that you're seeing. If they turn off an amazing keyword for you, boom, the performance goes down. It's not your fault, but the performance just went down. So it's a dirty model.
All right, we're done with this one. this one's going to get Aaron all fired up.
Okay, next.
All right.
Pricing model number 5, service menu. This one's kind of like what you would see at a spa. You outline exactly the service that you're going to complete for the client and have an allotted price for it. So for example, maybe you charge $1,000 for a build out and $80 for an account audit, right? Clean, set prices.
This one is, it can be simple, but if you have too many offerings, it can get really confusing really quickly for you and for your client. I recommend maybe taking a couple components of this, like an account build out or account audits, but in the long term, this is not a long-term partnership type of model. These are one-off deals or short-term agreements, and ultimately to scale and grow your agency. That's what our mission here is at WordStream, is to help you guys grow your agency. This is not going to help you do that. It's not a long-term. It's like a fast food restaurant right here. You're getting what you want and getting out, and it leaves your clients too much of the ability to take all that hard work and just run.
Bounce, especially with build out.
Yeah, so you might have a couple components of this in your grander plan, but don't rely solely on a service menu or an a la carte kind of style.
Especially if you're working with all different sized accounts, the amount of time you spend doing a build out for a large account is going to be very different for a small account, and that's something that you should be considering when you set up a menu like that. So long story short, we're really sorry. In the words of Justin Bieber, we can't give you the best model, but I hope that this gave you a really good understanding of some of the models available to you out there. And I quickly wanted Elliot to kind of share with you what we do here, which is a combo.
Right. We do like combos. We love combos. And what we mean by that is take a little bit of everything. Take what you like, leave what you don't. What we do here at WordStream is a combination between a flat model, or I guess what we use is a fixed price model, and a percent of spend. And we really like it because it sets the expectation that this is a long-term plan. We're going to grow with you. It ensures or locks in a steady revenue stream for WordStream, but it gives the customer some variability. If seasonality hits and their spend goes down, then they pay less because less is being generated through their AdWords account. But if we're doing a bang-up job and we're growing this thing like crazy and we're increasing the amount of leads more than they ever thought we could, and they're giving us more money, lo and behold, we're going to grow our revenue stream with them, and we're both going to win. So we really like the combo model, which is a flat fee or a fixed fee, however you want to call it, plus the percent of spend. The last component of why this is good is it locks in a protection for you, the agency. If someone, and actually, we jump into some like commitment length on stuff. If you do just a percent of spend, you are exposed to someone pulling all their spend out and taking that down to zero, and next thing you know, they might have 3 months left in their commitment at zero spend, and you're making $0. That's not great. But with the flat fee and percent of spend, even if they do that, you still get that base fee, and that's better than nothing. So it gives you a little bit of protection on your end.
100%. All right, I need to get this burger off the screen. I'm literally already planning burgers for lunch tomorrow based on looking at that. So that brings us along to the numbers game. I can't tell you how many clients I've had ask me, hey, what's a fair price for me to set for a build out? Or what's a fair price for me to set for an account audit? And again, that gets really, really tough. And you really need to be picking those numbers based on a couple of criteria. So the first thing to think about is, who are you selling these services to? If you're selling them to someone in New York, your pricing is very, very different than somebody in maybe rural Montana. So you need to take into consideration kind of the geographic location of the people that you're selling to.
Absolutely, and this comes back to expectation settings and being specific to your business. If you're a global agency, you might have a base model that you customize per geolocation or industry. If you're a hyper-focused or hyper-local agency focusing on a certain market, you probably can get away with a pretty standard plan that will suit your local customers. We can't tell you what that is because there's too many flavors. There's too many of you guys out there, but we want to let you know that that is an important consideration to take in.
Absolutely, and then I think it also goes without saying you need to factor in your operating costs. I mean, this should be the underlying thing that you're thinking about as you set every pricing decision. Is how much does it cost to run your agency? How many employees that you have? What is the overhead? And without getting into too much detail now, I would encourage you guys. HubSpot did an incredible blog post talking about giving you a bunch of different formulas you can use to better understand your operating costs and help to kind of prepare the equations ahead of time before you start picking a pricing model. So do some research, check out the HubSpot blog, and that can help you identify what those operating costs are.
Perfect. Enough said.
All right, and then there were a couple other miscellaneous things that we felt were incredibly important to talk with you today. So we're just going to kind of potpourri a couple questions that we hear a lot from clients. So first things first, should I publicize my pricing on my website?
Yes, in my opinion, in our opinion here at WordStream, transparency is a core value here at WordStream. We wholeheartedly believe in it, and it's something that I am totally embody and am a big advocate of. I believe you should put your pricing on your website. Very easy for people to see what you guys are all about, kind of what their options are, and it will also force you to be simple. If you have a really, really complicated pricing plan, it's kind of hard to articulate that on the website. If you can't even write it down on a website, imagine having that conversation with a customer. It just gets confusing, and my gut feeling is if you have a confusing model, they're not going to fully understand it. You might not have done the best job articulating. You might lose a deal on it, or maybe even worse is there were some misunderstandings from the get-go months in, and now you have a very unhappy customer who has the power of Twitter and Facebook, and that's no good for anybody. So I recommend the price on the website is transparent, and it forces you to be simple.
I couldn't agree more. I totally understand why people go the route of calling for pricing, wanting to have a conversation. I think that's going to become outdated. I think particularly the millennial generation, I've been doing a lot of research on them for some other projects, and we see that they highly value transparency and expect transparency. So I think that will become more and more popular over time, and I think it's important step to follow.
Definitely.
This is a critical one. What is the recommended contract length for a managed service deal?
Well, let's start with should I have one or not?
Ooh, that's a good point.
And yes.
100%.
100% you should have one. Now, in terms of recommended lengths, here at WordStream, we go by 6-month minimum and annual contracts. We only have 2 flavors to keep it simple, 6-month or annual. I have heard some people do quarterly. Would not recommend you do that. I would recommend a minimum of 6 months, annual, if not 2 years.
Yeah.
And why? Why do you recommend that? This stuff takes time. You can get immediate quick hits. That's great. But if you want a successful account that dominates the industry, it's going to take a lot of data. You got to take time to build these accounts out. You want to generate that data in a controlled manner, and then apply those lessons learned, A/B test, and grow this thing appropriately according to your client's goals and the services that they sell, really starting with the high value stuff. But ultimately, you want to build this thing out over time, because these things take a while to build, and you pour a ton of energy. Well, agencies, we do too. Every agency pours a ton of work into accounts up front. The last thing you want to do is pour all that work into the account. The account has yet to fully mature on its own, and your client takes all that hard work and runs with it, and leaves you kind of hanging there in limbo, or hanging there without anything to show for it. My last comment on contract length, and this is probably the most important area where expectation setting should happen at the very, very beginning of your conversations. I am a big believer in making sure that the expectations are set properly, clearly, and done consistently throughout the conversation, so no one's left guessing or left feeling like, hey, that wasn't 100% clear, that's not fair. You want to be clear from the get-go that we have contract links, and here's why, and this is why it's going to benefit you.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself, Elliot.
Nailed it.
All right, and then the final kind of potpourri question we hear a lot of people asking is, who should own this AdWords account? So I'll throw my 2 cents in here.
Okay.
I think it's important that you allow your client to own the account. I've seen a lot of agencies trying to do this thing where they start a new account for their clients and they put it in their name. I think it's kind of unethical, to be honest. I think, yes, you do run the risk of somebody bouncing with all of this work that you've done, but that's where contracts come into play. You can protect your work by having a strong long-term contractual agreement in place. I think it's important to keep the account in the client's name. I also think it's really critical to ensure that the client, or ensure that you're not putting all of your client accounts together. I've seen people try and put all of their client accounts in one account. That is a bad idea. Bad. You also don't want to, if a client doesn't have a brand new account, let's say their account's been running for 5 years and then they come to you, if you start a brand new account under your name, you're probably going to run into a ton of issues with Google, as they might see that you're double serving if things aren't all turned off quickly and appropriately. You also want to work with the data they already have. Somebody's been running an account for 5 years. They probably have all sorts of fascinating data that you can use to your advantage, and if you're starting a net new account, you're going to lose all of that. So definitely make sure that you're allowing your clients to own the account. That said, a little trick, go into this section of the account regularly. You want to see who has access to this account, because if they start to work with a new agency, maybe they're doing sales conversations with a new agency, sometimes they'll link up the agency in the account access section so they can jump into the account and assess it. Keep an eye out for new people added to there, and you might get a sense, oh my gosh, this client is thinking of leaving. And then you can start to do kind of damage control and jump in and important conversations with them. So
that's a great point.
Yeah, it's a little sneaky, but I think it's an important thing to do on a regular basis.
And I'm going to fully back Aaron on this one. Definitely, client owns their own data. It's a core component of transparency. You want to make sure that they know that that's a part of like the deal with you, but also it's just the right thing to do in terms of the partnership. You're going to start off this partnership, and I really use the word partnership intentionally with this client, and it's going to start off on the right foot. You're going to have a lot more trust. The client's going to trust you a lot more, and ultimately your goal is, if you perform well enough, they will never leave, and that's what our aim here at WordStream. That's how we help our agencies with their clients, and that's kind of the sweet spot that you're aiming to be in. You don't want to be doing sneaky business to lock people that don't want to work with you into working with you. That's not going to be a great way to grow your agency, and it's just going to create bad press, and nothing good's going to come from it. So we definitely agree with letting the clients own their own accounts.
I didn't even realize it when we were building this, but I guess Elliot and I are huge advocates of transparency with everything in your business model.
Well, it is one of our core beliefs, core principles.
So the next couple of slides we really kept in here, so when you guys go back, if you page back through the slideshow or rewatch the webinar, you can jump in and look at them. So I'm going to go through them very quickly so we have time to answer some of your questions, because I did see a ton coming through.
Yep, and I think we're already a little late, so we'll kind of, there's some pro
flying
cons.
through.
Feel free to, you'll get a copy of this, so don't feel like you have to write it down. It'll be in there.
All right, so Elliot, special offer.
So there is one last slide before the questions is we do have a special offer. If you have any questions about this, please give us a call. We'd be more than happy to do a live account assessment with any one of your current clients or a client you're working on. We would be able to discuss pricing models with you, or help you with general PPC issues, or if you're looking for ways to manage more accounts quickly with the tool, we can definitely help you with that. Our goal here is to help you grow your agency, be successful, and do it in a reasonable manner. So with that, shall we jump into some questions? Holy cow, I think we got a lot.
We got a lot of questions, guys.
We might not be able to get to all of these, so we'll try to
Great.
we'll try to respond to some of these.
All right. So let me start at the top. Okay, I'm seeing a lot that I think we answered as we went through. Someone asked, what percentage should we charge? When I was doing a lot of TV advertising, we charged 15% of spend for the TV campaign. I've heard of my competitors charging 40% for digital. What do we think?
Well, tough question because there's so many different flavors and it's all specific to your industry. We typically see, on average, anywhere from 10 to 20% is a very solid number, pretty industry average. We've seen up to 25%. So 15 is actually a pretty good number. At
40 seems like
40, that's a little high for me. At WordStream, our highest percentage is 10%, but we also have a $1,000 flat fee. You can see that on our pricing page. So that's where we do the combo method, and we don't necessarily have as high of a percentage of spend, but we make up for it in that flat fee. The nice thing about the flat fee is if you grow the client's spend, obviously our percentage goes down because it is a sliding percentage, but the overall billable percent when you roll in the percentage plus the $1,000 spend actually gets a lot lower very quickly as it grows. So that's what we do it. It seems to work pretty well, but 15% seems pretty good.
I can't believe all my questions. This is awesome, guys. So another one. We charge customer credit cards sometimes and invoice other times. Should we move to a dedicated billing system of some type? Is it a best practice to have the client prepay or post-pay?
Great questions. I can speak from a WordStream's perspective, but before I do that, my recommendation is do what's best for you.
Yeah.
Billing systems are expensive. They can be
complicated
and painful to implement. We definitely went through some growing pains to get on our billing system. With that said, as you grow, I would imagine having a billing system that is right for your business. There's tons of them out there. Point-of-sale systems are all over the place. It's the new rage these days. But I would recommend you get on something that's consistent and simple. So with that said, we really encourage our clients to pay us with a credit card. We do some invoicing on some large agency or some large managed service accounts, but majority of our business is done over credit card. It's much simpler, and we pay at the beginning of the month, so we pay up front, and that's definitely what we recommend. Obviously, if you're a business owner, the sooner you can get that. Kind of business 101. You want to collect the cash as quick as possible and pay out as late as possible. So I would recommend that you have them bill you up front, personally.
All right, so we're going to do 2 more quick questions because we are very low on time. So the next one is, have you found that one pricing model makes it easier to justify bringing on some sort of a tool? So certainly not the hourly model.
No, certainly not the hourly. That would be the exact opposite of bringing on
I mean, the performance one, great. You know, a tool is certainly going to significantly impact your performance, probably going to impact your percentage of spend.
Yeah, my team, what I and my team recommends is a percent of spend. And the thought behind that is our tools are going to make you more efficient. More efficient means that you will be able to either focus on strategy or really difficult tasks where the tool can help with the mundane, in the trenches type of work, so you ultimately will get better results for that client, that one client. Let's just stick to that one client now. And in turn, the client's going to be happy with the results and want to spend more money with you, and therefore you're growing your revenue from that one client, which at least our tool, there are percent of spend tools out there, which is counterintuitive, but our tool has a tiered-based approach, and as long as you don't jump up to the next tier, the percent of our cost, the cost of our tool gets smaller and smaller as clients grow. The other bonus to that is efficiency allows you to focus on other stuff. That's the beauty. Now, most agencies I speak with are web dev agencies, SEO agencies. PPC might not even be the best margins, but it's a great sticky service that they offer. So if you can get a tool on board, it will allow you to focus on your other high margin areas, which is great. You make more money. Or you can now focus on generating new business. You can, instead of spending 20% of your time on sales and biz dev stuff, you can spend 50% of your time on winning more clients because you now have the bandwidth. So I kind of went a little scope creep on that answer, but my recommendation would be some form of percent of spend, because the goal is to get better results so they spend more money so you get paid more.
All right, Elliot, last question for you. Like I said, there's so many to pick from, which is awesome. So the last one is, for initial account setup, how do you determine that account setup fee? Do you do limits on ad groups, numbers of ads created? What would be best in your opinion?
So this would be an a la carte style model. I think I would keep it simple. I don't come across this too often, to be quite honest. Kind of shooting from the hip right here. What I would do is keep it real simple. Establish a fee that makes the most sense for you. $300, $400 for a certain account size that has XYZ campaigns, ad groups, and then honestly, I think that's where I would go.
I'm going to be honest here. I think that this highlights one of the biggest problems with using that model, and it's the fact that you don't want to have to say per number of ad groups.
Yeah.
Because for every account, the number of ad groups you do should be different, but also the components in those ad groups, the number of keywords, the amount of time that goes into keyword research, the amount of time that goes into developing ads. Are you doing are you doing more complex things as well in this build out? I think it's tough to assign specific numbers. And so if you're going to do these sort of a la carte offerings and say, I'm going to do a build out for you, my recommendation is do an assessment of the account and then come back to them with a quote based on that account.
Yeah.
And that kind of fall into hourly. Again, you have to do what works for you. This does highlight one of the problems.
Yeah, I mean, my answer's not as strong as I'd like, because it's a tough question, because it all depends on you got to start with the website. Is this a very complex business? Is this a huge business that's going to require a huge account? That is going to take more work than a small business that, is very local, and it's very difficult for me to answer that. I'm kind of squirming over here on my answer, to be quite honest, because it's not clear, and that's why we don't necessarily recommend it, because there's no right answer, and you don't want to get into this picking and trying to hit a bullseye on every single client. Stick to a simple basic account model, and stick to contracts. Yeah.
Do a combo, do a contract.
And contracts gives the reason this highlights why contracts are so good, because it gives you the runway to build out these accounts appropriately and optimize. Account build out model is strongly recommended.
All right, well, that was awesome. I'm so glad you guys were super engaged. I wish we had time to answer more questions, but time has come that we have to conclude today's webinar. So both Elliot and I want to thank you for your time and totally encourage you to connect with us on Twitter, via email, talk with Elliot's team if you're interested, if you want to discuss anything that we covered today in more detail. And again, just to note, this presentation will be shared with all of you via email shortly. So thanks so much for joining us, and we hope to see you on the next agency style presentation that we do. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you.